covered in dust, surrounded by rubble. The last fight back. This is the end of the Hamas chief. Israel eliminates Yahya Sinwar. Total decimation of Hamas leadership.
While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages.
But is bigger escalation next? And that's our top focus on India First. Hello and welcome. You watching India First. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Israel's most wanted terrorist and the mastermind of the October 7, 2023 terror attacks in Israel, Yahya Sinwar, has been killed in a surprise operation in southern Gaza. And the last 20 seconds of Yahya Sinwar's life have been caught on a drone camera. He went down fighting and he went down defiant. He wasn't killed on the basis of precise intelligence inputs either by Shin Bet or by Mossad or even by elite commandos of the Israeli Defense Forces, but he was killed by young trainee reservists who chanced upon the suspicious movement of 3 men in Rafah in southern Gaza. The trainee soldiers challenged the 3 men who ran for cover, with the trainee soldiers chasing them, and then they opened fire. Later, a drone captured an injured man sitting on a sofa in a bombed-out building. And as the drone approached the man, one hand hurt. He hurled a stick at the drone, and then from the Markava tanks to sniper fire, the Israeli forces opened up. And the rest, as they say, is history. Yahya Sinwar is dead.
An Israel Defense Forces drone captures a bombed-out building in southern Gaza Strip. The first-person view drone that enters the first-floor window of the destroyed building. It moves from one room to another. There is only dust and rubble everywhere. And then it stops to focus on 3 red sofas that have turned grey in the aftermath of the Israel attack. On the left, a shadowy figure emerges. Its face is covered. His right hand is resting on the arm of the sofa, but the forearm has been blown off. The man is Yahya Sinwar, the political chief of Hamas. As the drone gets closer, it becomes clear that Sinwar, who has clearly been hit in the shelling, is holding a stick in his hand. As the Israel drone approaches him, he flings it over his head at it. The stick misses its target, but the Israel Defense Forces did not.
Yahya Sinwar hid in the place where our forces were attacking for a long time. We did not know he was there, but we continued to act with determination. Our forces identified 3 terrorists fleeing from house to house, running. The forces who were in the area attacked the terrorist, who split up after being shot at. Yahya Sinwar ran away alone to one of the buildings.
This is how Yahya Sinwar met his end. The operation was reportedly a routine raid that caught Sinwar by chance. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared the score with Sinwar was settled. But this isn't the end of war in Gaza.
Yahya Sinwar is dead. He was killed in Rafah by the brave soldiers of the Israel Defense Forces. While this is not the end of the war in Gaza, it's the beginning of the end. To the people of Gaza, I have a simple message. This war can end tomorrow. It can end if Hamas lays down its arms and returns our hostages.
The United States applauded the operation, with President Biden personally congratulating Netanyahu.
But now's the time to move on. Move on, move toward a ceasefire in Gaza. Ensure that we move in the direction that we're going to be in a position to make things better for the whole world. It's time for this war to end and bring these hostages home.
The Pentagon clarified that the US played no direct role in the operation but had provided intelligence and tracking support.
This was an Israeli operation. U.S. forces were not directly involved. We've been sharing information and intelligence in support of hostage recovery efforts and the tracking of these leaders who have been holding hostages, to include Americans. And so, in so much as it's helped to inform Israeli operations in general, writ large, certainly it has played a role.
Iran, a longtime supporter of Hamas, mourned Sinwar's death, hailing the Hamas chief as a martyr. Sinwar, who rose to leadership after the death of Ismail Haniyeh in July, has been a key figure in Hamas's operations, who masterminded and orchestrated the October 7 attack, which ignited the West Asia war. Bureau Report, India Today.
So from Mohammad Daif to Ismail Haniyeh, from Saleh al-Aruri to now Yahya Sinwar, Israel appears to have systematically hunted down and eliminated the Hamas leadership and multiple fighters in the past 1 year after the October 7 terror strike on Israel. Both Hamas and Hezbollah have their top leadership eliminated now. The big question that we're asking here now is, will this lead to negotiations, perhaps peace, return of hostages, or will this conflict escalate even further? Joining me on this special broadcast are two domain experts for both the Palestinian and the Israeli perspective. But given the situation, we are not going to both of them together, but one after the other. And let me begin by introducing Dr. Wael Awad. He's a senior foreign journalist who's covered West Asia for over 3 decades. And later, Forrest Rain Marcia, writer and strategist, will join us from Israel. But Dr. Awad, coming to you first, your appreciation, sir, what does the killing of Yahya Sinwar mean for the Hamas and its war on Israel?
Well, I don't see any changes on the ongoing war, because the parameters have been put by Netanyahu that this war will not stop, and there is no question, even if they eliminated Sinwar, that will stop. Their political and military objective has not been achieved. So having said that, I would say that, Gaurav, this is not the first time that the Israeli killed the Hamas leaders. I mean, I think he's the 5th or the 6th leaders have been eliminated by Israel, from from Qassam to Ahmad Yassin to Ismail Haniyeh, to all these leaders of the Hamas leaderships has been removed. But if you look at the trends of the Hamas strength, in fact, it has gone stronger every time they bring a different leader. So I don't see an end, and I think this will give only a mileage to Netanyahu, and he is gaining popularity by achieving his military objective, and that's what we are seeing. So continuity of the war will go on for him as long as he stay in the chair.
Okay, but as you very rightly mentioned, from Mohammad Daif to Ismail Haniyeh to Saleh Aruri and now Yahya Sinwar, and even leadership earlier, the top leadership stands eliminated. A number of cadre, if not defeated, they have been displaced. Will Hamas, in your appreciation, or the sponsors of Hamas or the backers of Hamas, will they overall now be, one, open to return of hostages or giving up arms, or will the fight only escalate?
No, Gaurav, remember who was putting obstacles for the release of the prisoners and exchange of the deal between Hamas and Israel. In fact, when they removed Ismail Haniyeh, he was the chief negotiator, and he was removed. So now Sinwar, he was there, and they have removed. And if you look at even the American, even the European Union and the Arab countries, Qatar and Egypt, said that it was always Prime Minister Netanyahu who were putting hurdles, and he didn't want to come to the dictation of the Hamas, and he wanted them to lay their arm and give the hostage without any kind of conditions. But Hamas said, you stop all the cessations, withdraw your troops from there, and we will exchange prisoners. So I think it is quietly understood internationally that there is no respect or no question that they will stop, or they wanted to really, seriously, Israel is negotiating the release of the hostages. That's why you can see the demonstration till date is against Netanyahu, and they're asking for the release. My point I'm trying to raise here is there are declared objective of the Israelis And the declared objective of Israel is what we have said about it. But undeclared objective is to have total control, reoccupy Gaza Strip and also West Bank, and have the full Israel under one flag, that is the Jewish state. So while they will go with 2.5 million Palestinians in Gaza, I think the ethnic cleansing will continue, the genocide will continue under the pretext of killing a leader or no, because you are not killing the ideology. And as long as occupation and expansion exists, there will be a resistance, and I don't think the Palestinians will give up at any stage. And I can remember and remind you of what Omar al-Mukhtar, people nowadays are picking up, the leader of Libya, said when the Italian, colonist Italian, captured him to hang him. He said, you can kill me, but for generations to come, you will fight those who are resisting occupation.
Yes. So Israel, of course, Dr. Awad, insists it will never let Hamas rule Gaza again. Its operations will continue till hostages are recovered. So two aspects here. Is Hamas in a position to once again administer Gaza Strip, or is that history now in your view? And will Hamas return hostages, or Hamas only wants a swap? Israel releases the prisoners who attacked Israel on the 7th of October and those held from earlier, and only then will there be a hostage swap and not unilateral return.
I don't see any hostage swap at any stage, an early stage on this, Gaurav. What's going to happen is, as I said, there is an objective to be achieved, and I don't see an early end to this war. It's not the fight between Israel and Hamas. It's the fight between Israel and Palestinians, and now they expanded the war against Lebanon. They're attacking Syria every day. They think that by weakening the axis of resistance extending from Iran to Iraq to Syria to Lebanon to Houthis in Yemen, Israel will be taking the upper hand and change the Middle East into the new Middle East order. But what we are not witnessing is a new Middle East disorder.
New Middle East disorder likely in the days and weeks ahead. And since you mentioned the Hezbollah, Dr. Awad, let me take this to the Hezbollah leadership. Practically the entire top leadership has been eliminated. Hezbollah is also facing a crisis with a large number of their fighters now, after those pager attacks and walkie-talkie attacks, being displaced and dislodged and made inoperational. So in your appreciation, is Israel in a stronger position? Have they been able to disrupt the supply lines from Iran through Syria for Hamas and Hezbollah to be resupplied with rockets and missiles? And has that been disrupted, perhaps in some instances destroyed?
I think the Hezbollah gained the upper hand back and normalized its attack on Israel and the retaliation, because they were able to communicate, and the use of the pager is minimal among the commandos and among the troops of the 100,000 of Hezbollah fighters. So I think the structure of Hezbollah has been there since 1982, and you know that they have been created only after Israeli occupation of Beirut. And that's why they have been liberation forces. And ever since the 2006 invasion of Lebanon by Israel, and then followed the withdrawal, Hezbollah went from strength to more strength. So therefore, I don't see any changes in the current leadership. You can see the precise attack and the Israel trying to encourage into Lebanon through the border, and by pushing away the UNIFIL forces and killing Indian soldiers there in the forces, and also trying to destroy and remove them into the Litani River behind. It's a clear indication that the war is not on. Okay. Again, I'm saying there is a message here Israel trying to give through Mr. Netanyahu. We're talking of a greater Israel, and greater Israel means it is occupying from Euphrates to Nile, and that is including Syria, Jordan, Palestine, north of 1/3 of Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. So if that is the objective, I don't see pushing Hezbollah away from the border will change. As long as occupation exists, Hezbollah will exist, and also Hamas will exist.
Dr. Awad, we will track the story closely, but for joining me here on this India Today special broadcast, many thanks. You've given us the Palestinian perspective. I now want to switch focus and get you the Israeli perspective on this story. And joining me on the broadcast is Forrest Rain Marcia, a writer and a strategist who joins us from Israel. Ms. Marcia, Israel is celebrating the killing of Yahya Sinwar, but nowhere close to the return or recovery of hostages. In your appreciations, after the killing of Yahya Sinwar, can Israel at least partially declare victory after 7th of October? Will Israel negotiate for the return of hostages, or will it continue to escalate, targeting both the Hamas and the Hezbollah?
First of all, we are celebrating the elimination of a very evil man who killed very many Israelis, Jews, Arabs, also Gazans, and foreigners. So the world is a much better place now. It's very good. And we are continuing with the war. The war is much bigger than one man, although Yahya Sinwar was a mastermind behind the Hamas invasion. He was just one man. So there are many other people that are behind this, and the idea needs to be finished, not just one person. Gaza needs to know that it cannot invade Israel if it wants to live on our border. It cannot try to exterminate us. That won't happen.
Okay. Will Israel be under global pressure with Sinwar dead to negotiate, to find a settlement, or will Israel continue to punish both Hamas and Hezbollah? And how would you respond to criticism that Israel now wants to be an expansionist force, occupy territory till the Litani River, push the Hezbollah back 30 kilometers and ensure it reoccupies Gaza to ensure Hamas does not rule that territory again?
Israel only wants to be safe. We need to make sure that no enemy can invade and rape our women and murder our children and steal our families and take them hostages. The world needs to understand that when Jews, after the Holocaust, said never again, we meant it. And we mean it now as well. There is no intention to be expansionist. The intention is to keep our people safe. There are all kinds of pressures from different countries around the world to negotiate and capitulate to the enemies that are trying to destroy us so that they can live to fight us again another day. This is not what Israelis want. What we want is our hostages to be returned to us, and we need to know that we can be safe. Yesterday, our Prime Minister announced what deal is appropriate. He said that any Gazan who surrenders hostages will be allowed to live and will be allowed to leave Gaza if that is their choice. But there is no reason for us to capitulate to terrorists who are trying to kill us. That is not a way to create peace. The way to create peace is for them to understand that fighting us is not a good idea, that living with us side by side is a very good idea. Any country that does that benefits. They benefit from our technology, from our wisdom, from our help, our assistance. We can do a lot for them to help them if that's what they want.
When
but
Gaza,
this is not
when
the path that
Gazans
their
say,
leaders
or when the
are
Hamas
down.
says, when Hamas says that there is no question of returning hostages, there can be a prisoner swap. Will Israel be willing for a prisoner swap? And will Israel be willing to return from Gaza, even if Hamas were to administer that territory, the Gaza Strip?
No, Hamas cannot administer the Gaza Strip. Hamas cannot be in existence anymore. Hamas is a very dangerous idea that many Arab countries have learned that the Muslim Brotherhood is a very dangerous thing to have around and have made them illegal, like in Egypt. And this cannot be who is in charge and raising their children to train them to kill and murder Jews. Arab children should know that they can be whatever they want in the world. They can be scientists, they can be artists, they can be anything. What these poor children are raised to be is murderers, and that is not acceptable. It's not acceptable for Jews, and it's not acceptable for these poor children that are raised in this culture.
But
if we've
Prime
seen
Minister Benjamin
materials that was
Netanyahu
taken in Gaza.
Okay, but is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the same page with the Israeli Defense Forces? Because he says, he speaks of, decimation of Hamas or words to that effect. The armed forces have opined that that may not be militarily possible. So is there, what's the end game as far as Israel is concerned, and what's the roadmap? How will that be achieved? unless this war continues indefinitely?
No, the war will not continue indefinitely. We are making very good progress and succeeding in doing what needs to be done to make our people safe in the north and the south, all over the country. There cannot be under missile bombardment not from Hamas, not from Hezbollah, and also not from Iran. This is not a way to live. And just because we are strong and we invent ways to protect our people does not mean that it is acceptable for us to live in this way. So our prime minister he's not the only person making the decisions. It's the government that makes the decisions, and the army has to obey the government. We in Israel we're a democratic state, and Jewish people have a culture of debate, and we respect very much the people that take care of our security. So it is okay for them to say all kinds of things about the way they think the future should be, but it is the elected government that makes the choices.
Since you also mentioned Iran, Ms. Marcia, does Iran remain a target, or will there be back channels with Iran to negotiate for a return of hostages? Or after those 181 or about 200 missiles, ballistic missiles struck Israel, Israel will strike back at Iran?
Iran is the head of the snake. Iran has many arms in different countries of proxy armies that are trying to eliminate Israel and then move on to the rest of the world. Iran needs to be stopped so that this evil can be stopped. Iran has every single country that it deals with, it ruins. And we see this in Yemen, and we see it in Lebanon, and Iraq they are dealing with also. And so this needs to be stopped. If Iran is not stopped, it will continue.
The last 30 seconds I have on this part of the show, I want to quickly ask you, will that release of that video that we are watching right now, the last 20 seconds of Yahya Sinwar's life, there are many who argue that, including Iran, that Israel made a mistake releasing that video. It will lead to more recruitment, and it actually shows Yahya Sinwar went down fighting. Your take on that?
I think that the last moment of his life, when he had a hole in his head and he was crumpled in the ground, very pathetically curled up in a ball, is the moment that counts. And that just shows we are the nation that did brain surgery on him to save him from cancer. And this is how he repaid us. So now he had a hole in his head, and that is the end of his great ideal of leading the armies of Islam against Israel. This is how people who attack Israel end up. So that video is a video. I thought it was ironic that it looks like his forearm is blown off, which is very similar to an injury that was caused to American Jewish hostage Hersh Goldberg Polin, who had his arm blown off by Gazan murderers. So there is some poetic justice here. This all happened in a very auspicious
but very clearly, this war, it seems, is only set to intensify. For restraint, Marcia, for joining me from Israel, many thanks. No meeting of the minds between the Palestinian perspective and the Israeli perspective, and that's been the story for decades and decades. This war is only set to intensify, and we will continue to report this big story. That is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.